I can't tell you how delighted I am to see everyone here. I know His Holiness is also. I just have very brief words and His Holiness will be out. There's a poem that I especially like from a very early Indian meditator and master, Chandragoman. Animals eat plentiful grass when hungry and drink cherished water when thirsty. Why say they do it to benefit others? But there are supreme beings concerned solely with the benefit of the world. Like the sun, they illuminate the entire earth. Like the earth itself, they support the weight of all beings. These great ones, free from personal interests, strive to give the taste of happiness to others. We have one of those great beings here today. As we start this teaching, the stages of meditation and the 37 practices of the Bodhisattvas, I caution myself that this is really a moment when you can really change your mind. These days can really have an enormous effect on you. I remember there was a teaching that His Holiness gave in Los Angeles about 15 years ago. In the middle of an initiation, he stopped midstream and he said, if you can ever pull your minds together, do it now. So I speak to myself and I say, Richard, if you can ever pull your mind together, do it now, because you will have an extraordinary effect. I'd also like to make an announcement that one of the great lamas and teachers and meditators in the Gelugpa tradition and all of Tibet, Geshe Langri has passed away. Really one of the great spiritual friends that we have had, and a close personal friend of mine, and an extraordinary devotee of His Holiness. So I'd like to dedicate my positive merit to the living memory of Geshe Langri. And now His Holiness the Dalai Lama.
Good morning. How are you? I am very, very happy to find an opportunity to explain one important Buddhist text to some of those individuals. I think some of you may not be Buddhist, but just as you came to listen what is about this Buddhism. Perhaps, you see, without changing one's own religion, some Buddhist technique can take. Buddhist technique or Buddhist method. So through that way, it can enrich one another's tradition. So then those individuals who consider as a Buddhist, then I think my sort of basic style or belief. Now time has come. Now we should go the original, the authentic Indian Buddhist tradition. That's, I think, very important. Because sometimes I think the Tibetan Buddhism is quite vast. So some you see one particular sort of practice, of course very useful, but generally speaking, it is better to have complete sort of understanding about the Buddhist sort of system or the structure. So these texts, I think, is useful. Then, as you know, I always feel or believe, as a human being, as a Buddhist, each human being, have the capacity or potential to make a contribution for a better world. On that level, I always try to promote human values, because I feel, in spite of many colorful development, external development, in deep inside, generally speaking, still we are something missing. So as a result, unhealthy situation, unhealthy sort of events happening here and there. So it is really, I think, important to make effort to promote basic human values. So, from my own sort of share, trying to make contribution. So all of us, same human being, same potential, have same opportunity to make a contribution for better society, happier society. And then, as a Buddhist, another task or responsibility or opportunity to make contribution is closer relation or promotion of religious understanding between different major religious traditions. So, here, a few days here, and I think more than 1 week in Indiana, I feel this is a good opportunity to make contribution and share one must my own sort of share for that direction. So I'm very, very happy. So I want to express my appreciation to the organizer, Rinpoche, Gyalwar Rinpoche, and Richard Gere, and all those people, individual or organization, who helped to materialize this occasion. Thank you very much. Now, I think many of you, already know that my basic emphasis, I come here not for sort of propagating Buddhism or conversion. Certainly not. I always try to make it clear or emphasize that each people, it is better to keep your own tradition, your own traditional value, including religious faith. So here Americans, basically Judeo-Christian tradition, so it is better to keep your own tradition. Then also certainly I come not for selling religion, selling Dharma. I'm quite enough. No worry. The government, last 40 years, I'm the guest of Indian government, so I think I'm the longest guest of Indian government. So under the Ngatawati Tingi, Chusang Lama Rinpoche Sunyadi, and Wongur Cheshe Chidu, Namja Dashin Dugdi, Bo Angye Chidu, Sabating the Jochosundadi.
So I always appreciate certain sentiments expressed by one of the Tibetan teachers, Chupsang Rinpoche, who wrote the following lines. He said that although when a High Lama gives empowerment and initiations from a higher throne, it looks very impressive. But when I found out that Lamas was expecting equally high offerings, I felt deeply saddened.
Then also, I come not for that feeling, or I have something unique thing to offer to you, nothing. Or I do not consider myself some very learned or something. No, I am just a tiny follower of Buddha, just a simple Buddhist monk. The name of Dalai Lama, this big name, or Nobel laureate, these are the man-made. The reality, deep inside, I'm just a simple human being, a simple Buddhist monk. Try to follow Buddha. Thank you. Try to follow Buddha's teaching through my own experience. I think now last almost 50 years experience. 50 years, effort, and the result of 50 years effort. I think some experience begin to develop, particularly the altruism or Bodhicitta and understanding about Shunya. Of course, still just beginning. But even then, I really feel some immense benefit on the basis of day-to-day life, and particularly when passing through difficulties. And also I believe the practice some teaching which bring immediately peace of mind today is also good preparation for next life. Now Dalai Lama getting older and older, now 64 years old. So in any case, now 40 years passed as a refugee. Now I think next 40 years, I don't know whether I can alive next 40 years or not, I don't know. So you see, the issues of practice, because this is my own experience, if we really practice sincerely and everyday basis, it really helpful to sustain inner peace. And this is, according to Buddhist belief, this is the real sort of foundation for practice eons, finally to achieve Buddhahood. So some of those serious Buddhists here, I want to share some of these, my practice. Otherwise, you see, and also you see, I usually follow, as I mentioned earlier, those ancient Indian as well as Tibetan masters. They are sort of clear guidance. That's very important. Sometimes I'm quite skeptical those individuals who claim some, the new way or new sort of tradition. That I doubt. I think it is better, maybe foolish or stubborn, it is better, safer to rely on those great masters such as Nagarjuna, Arya Sangha, and Shandadeva, and here like Kamalashila. These people are really experienced and learned great masters. So I think their text, their guidance, I think really reliable. As well as some of those Tibetan great masters. So usually I prefer the teaching or lesson or course without bell, without drum. That's much better. Thorough explanation. There's no risk. If you people accept or not, no problem. But if you perform some, the drums and bells, then there are also some, risk. But in any case, in the Indiana, I'm going to take that risk. So it makes little contradictions. Without a contradiction, life may not be full. So contradiction also sometimes is useful, isn't it? Now, the actual sort of explanation, of course, my English is not adequate. So if I try to explain, through my own sort of broken English, then it is my sort of suffering. And you also may not get the clear sort of understanding. So that's your suffering. So mutual suffering. So no use. So I'm going to explain through my own sort of my own mother tongue. Good. 당 고대들이 님은 당고디 추준 당고디 인자 긴작성 것이든기 음식이 것이든기.
Since this is the first session of this series of teachings, we will do some preliminary recitations, which include paying homage to the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, affirmation of certain spiritual principles, and then also we will do the recitation of the Heart Sutra.
어차피 디 로로 여gen즈 님돌이었대 로로 메겐즈 아니 단다야 템퍼체 봐 아니 유자숨바 아니 덤발 차차야 아니 파톤 돈던바 제라니 겨와모스 도디 치디 아니 가서디 까마르르마메다 셔서기 미닥바다 동와다 진짜 땡기야리 and issue the more, so they have just was a more check to share. Or the good Jemishag, the good Jemishag, to share it, and issue the Midabocomia to share.
Among the members of the audience, those who know these prayers by heart, you can join in the recitation. Those who don't, you should reflect upon the meanings of these verses. Particularly the verses consist of three activities. One is paying homage to the Buddha by reflecting upon his great kindness as the teacher. And then the second part is a recitation of some sutras, which principally sort of presents the essence of the Buddha's teaching, which includes avoidance from negative activity, engaging in positive actions, and also a contemplation on the impermanent nature of life. And this will be then followed by the third element, which is the dedication of one's positive activities towards the benefit of all. So you should reflect upon these meanings as we do the recitation. Among the members of the audience, are there how many are there who could do the recitation in Chinese language? Maybe you could raise your arms.
Dhamma jamden de jin shava da jomba yang da wa do be sanje riba da jason dhamma de hora shava jin jamba jiwon de kalo jiwa lana me ba da minam je dhamma sanje pe jawa shangja do ba la ja za lo ja do ja lo jo dhamma jamden de jin shava da jomba yang da wa do be sanje riba da jason Jiten Jamba Jivu de Kalo Yuwa Lana Meva Lada Menanje Damba Sanje Jumden de Penjawa Shakja Duba La Jalo Lo Jalo Jalo Jo Damba Jumden de Dijin Jawa Da Jamba Yanda Wa Riva Da Jason Damba Deora Java Jiten Jamba Jivu de Kalo Yuwa Lana Meva Lada Menanje Damba Sanje Jumden de Penjawa Shakja Duba La Jalo Jalo 강제 강니조 제담제 사전대로 공부 등부로는 안내 지대되나 소지소 대제개발 결로 차저로 남도 공원 초도 수사고 예시자도 설계론부 자바지대 소나 항해와 공부 전예제로 차저로 산전담바 전면 다외신 선동자와 결로 차저로 대제제도 스와 소모 냐미 견진제로 차저로 공부 두지 현담바 담제 견배등보고 선왕연대 자도진 대신 정화 차저로 다변대자정 예외의 손례도지 주도다동 쇼조바 시주로 샤라 차저로 전에 전라야 로바다라로도네 신게 담보 연대네 긴류마야 차자로 디과제야 메자진 교부송소보 랑게 semne 용소 드네 사제 담보에 감마르레 마메다 주마세보 쇼고다 메나마다 데다보 드제샤나 데다 산원대에 탐제세고에 고방도네 경제 자주대 가다나다 제외로 주베 세베 정론로 파보군조 송로 자자론데게 다게 더버 되제나 전대대 제베고 자고 풍거레라 개롱게 견데 정보다 전조 선배 견데 다지도 저데 제 점대대 사모 나와 제제 제제 남다니 땡에 자마 정보 조소 양데 제 자조 삼보 삼보 아버지의 원조시로게 바로도 전부 삼모셔바니라 남바다제 공부하고 도달라야 사실제 남바남바도 에네 사제제도 샤레브 샤조 삼보 삼보 전부 아버지의 원조란 되게 메소시제 보 갈라라 셔제 바로도 전부 삼모셔바셔바도 바데 시다라고라자 되게 제메바다 샤조 삼보 Pabachara se unjoke satanda bashara dode bola dege jemezo shere bo reje bo reje bo kanala shara jebar Samo jaba jaba deva de dida nabra tawa shade kumbo ngabo dida gaya ranshin je tongpa naba yanda wa jezo tawo su tongpa wo tongpa ni su 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 le tongpa ni shema yin tongpa ni me ya su shen Dushida dushida nabra jaba na tongpa wo shade bo dida shedam je tongpa ni de sinye me ba ma je ba ma ga wa tima me wa tima da dawa dawa me ba kawa me ba wo shade bo dida na tongpa ni da su So amen, do amen, do amen, me me no me no me jine me yime so me no me jine ro me reja me sheme do me ke kame ba ne ye kame ye na bra sheme kame ba do ya me do mare ba sa ba me ka je se ba ba Deja do me wa da kun jo wa da ko ba da la me ye she me to ba me ma to ba ya me do she re wa da da na shan jo sam ba na to ba me be she re je pa re do chen ba la ten je ne de sun na tre ba me de ta ba me be shin je la de shin do de ne nya nge le de be ta ra chen do de sun do na bu je be san je tham je jan she re je pa re do chen ba la ten ne ana me ba ya da bo zo be chen jo do mo lo zo ba san je zo da she re je pa re do chen be nga re ba chen be nga la na me be nga me nyam ba da nya be nga do nge dam je ro do je wa je be nga me se be na dam re je wa sa de sha ra je pa re do nga me ba de da ga de pa ra sam ga de bu de so wo sha re bu chen jo sam ba jom bo de la je ro je sam wo la ba jo de ne jom de ding de le je de chen jo sam ba Abo jere se wonjo la le zo je ja wa je ne le zo re je bo de je no re je bo de je ne je do je ye da ma je do je ro je ba ro do je mo sa mo la je de je sha wa na ja je zo ya ra ngo jam de je de ge je ka za na sa da na ba sha ra do de bo da ja jo sa bo jo bo pa wa je re zo wonjo da tham je da de me ko ro de a da me Just je ben je de ye ra de jam de je sung ba la ba de do na cham ba go mo da jen ge chu chu de da ni ka sa za shi lu zu gen za shi chu chu de ne de ye
We will then do the recitation of the salutation verses from Maitriya's clear ornament of realizations and Nagarjuna's fundamentals on the middle way.
年对是我所能根系年纪年是真是刚言当着了本把相当狼心年纪是点正中杂报刚大样当等本多能能报跟的老总的年对上说三百所是上界经历用的老上层路康给人心着我说高我没把见没把千万没把当没把我没把真没把大天天没天心没这把你心心早白上界马能界当把的老上层路上界并且首先没当中这个零些年的将把的上界选择没得我也如果那么大想了想把了说想啊想别这些呢什么东西他就边把小娃上也说确诊在线修就如去 다 군루 넘버 타고 줘야 제도 인 사지 쳐서 뭐 차숨 넘버에 디니 두긴다
Now to emphasize the importance of cultivating the right and appropriate motivation to participate in these teaching sessions, we will do the recitation of a verse that emphasizes that.
上界学当上界上当拉上就把多当内就说是大概这些级别是能见到了本界上界如果了就上界学当上界上当拉上就把多当内就大概就是级别是能见到了本界上界如果了就上界学当上界上当拉上就把多当内就说是大概就是级别是能见到了本界上界如果了 刚给读者你说呢，当我同学旁边是当边村内正在被过当的了长城路。那是主要是呢的，从大开始了呢，第一主要从大的，
The purpose of practicing Dharma is to actually to fulfill our aspiration to attain happiness.
And then 나라도 삼을로 랑게 난게 동해 메드바다 대완되바디 중전 삼매가 봐. 예 같이. 아니 동해 세야다 대화 주야가 톱다다 랑게 난게 예듯이.
All of us are equal at the fundamental level to have the basic aspiration to attain happiness and overcome suffering. And also, just like oneself, all others share the same right to fulfill this fundamental aspiration to be happy and overcome suffering.
미장도 마세베 소자 너는 디두 소용되바 참말로야 대바다 톱다는데 집어이 말이.
So far as this aspiration to be happy and overcome suffering is concerned, and also the natural right to fulfill this basic aspiration is concerned, it is not just we human beings who share this fundamental nature, but also all other sentient beings too.
이나야 다 아니 다 주비하게 디기당 다 아니 세야게 동네리야 조 아니 지 공에 쉐발라 되댕에게 대단들에다 소디두직 조조 이루 똑배간에 배지 디루 소용돼야 직다 니예벤 안에 배지 둔두절이야 삼로단이 이루 똑배간에 아니 동네 시도시야다 지 대화도시야 양나변 남도 먼고 견신의 동네 배용야 디 배지 둔두를 가지 야말섬기 둔두 가시는 명세지신 전부 여주 리미트 지신 여주
However, the difference between human beings and the animals is that the extent to which we are able to fulfill the aspiration, go about fulfilling this aspiration to be happy and overcome suffering. For example, when you look at the nature of suffering and happiness, the happiness that we seek, the suffering that we wish to avoid, there are principally two categories. One category of suffering and happiness are really pertain to the level of our sensory experiences. These are experiences that we normally experience through the five senses, be it happiness, pleasure, or pain and suffering. Then there is, however, another level of experience, be it happiness or suffering, that has more to do with what can be called the mind or mental faculty, which involves the application of thoughts and emotions and more complex thoughts and cognitive processes. So we can perhaps say that human beings are able to extend their quest for happiness and overcoming of suffering at both these levels, whereas animals, their quest is confined only to the sensory level.
공회 원보리야 조답게 되댕에기 다 디두되다 조 지금 이루 답배간에 아니 영대하게 디두니부디 사실 누버스는 잖아 이루 답배간에 영대하게 숙체래 빼나 다 지금 생각나는 뭐지지 숙천보 지게베이나 아니 지다 원부시베다 류기적자 지금 미기게다 가서 우리 그게 입도 가도 나가는 신기 지금 나에 지금 로몰로 써봐. 근데 그게 일 가서다 일 침보용이야. 간다지 공연시바 조된 공연시바 조 공연시바 균이 지금 침보용대야. 숙침보 집에 있나야. 일을 하네 뭐지고 집에 있나? 디 동네디 시진은 도구면도 일을 땡땡에 동네디 매바 차도 매바래. 다 텔레도데 지 공연 시베레 지 수민지바 잠 민년바 침 미신발로 써봐 가다 딘데기베 미두부지기베 강에 미두부지기베 이나야 그다음에 일을 타네 지 사무스타네 삼년나네 지 양지 그게 대화로 숙성부 예대로 신베이나 아다지 아니 공연 시발로 또 땡땡에기 아니 가서 림버로 커타네 뭐지고 여대버디디 시기는 돼야 섹셔도
However, if you compare the acuteness of these two categories of experiences, the sensory on the one hand and the mental on the other, we find that actually the experiences of pain and pleasure or happiness and suffering that take place more at the mental level, the level of thought and emotion, is more acute and more powerful. Now we can understand this by simply reflecting upon a fact that we all can relate to. For example, like if someone lacks some kind of sense of inner happiness, happiness at the mental level, then that person, when confronts with adverse conditions, physical hardships or whatever, the person is not able to cope with them. And in fact, that person may, at the sensory level, be exposed to more pleasurable sensations, be it listening to a music, pleasant music, or having sort of coming into contact with some attractive physical objects and so on, which would normally give rise to some kind of joy. But if the person is mentally depressed or something is wrong deep down, then that even these sensory levels of experiences are overwhelmed. On the other hand, if the person has some kind of happiness from within at the level of mind, thoughts and emotions, then even if that person is confronted with adversity, be it hardships, some kind of unpleasant news or noise or whatever, hostile environment, the person, because of his inner stability, inner happiness, the happiness at the level of the thoughts and emotion, he or she is able to overwhelm the adverse experiences at the level of senses. So this shows that the experience of pain and pleasure and happiness, suffering at the level of the mind, the thoughts and emotion, is actually more powerful and acute.
That's all Salutani. She yiluting any Tunge Seada, Chita Devatuyas in a day. Mership has Chipanagic Chadangi, Lotiniki Tembe, Kadukadulic, Simbayando. Yaji Kadukadulici, Hot Kaliachi, Majibush beyond there, and the G on the Yari, emotion, Junze Marichan, Tapo, Hot Hobby on the Haji. Yinaya, Zada, the Yadim Richiglia, Hop Holia, the energy, the Nangbe Shavina, Sanji Shun Shavina, Mung Paja, Kwambe Wangi, and Chadanglo, Lulia, Hop, Suksumbutin, the Nigitembe, Didu Toy on there, the Nijig Yarala, Ya Rigdi, Jumze Samta, Gaba Samta, Gaba to Jumze, the Nigel Samutani, the Nigatane, any Rimbegi, Sardo Kumji Tempe Tane, in Assembly, Namdog, Jundochen, D Tempe, Assembly, Gadu Toy on there, Chikudua. That Dinile, Simon Susserisha, Namadi, Nargo Kombewangi, Chadango, Hop Hole, Guinea, Didu Toy on there, Dedang, Tella, Cora, Kombewang Tesam Shiremato, Tell Kopatamido Drakimery. Da Yulu Gane, Samta, Goba, Jumzen, the Negatane, any Kasure, Chituniene, Zawa Savajik Tane, in Semnalolia chicken, Didu Toy on there, Tella, Kota Jumzen Betane, Yondevaji, Yondeng Rigni, Pajichitra, do something.
And also, within the realm of experience that takes place at the level of thoughts and emotions, if we examine carefully, we will also find, again, two kinds. On the one hand, powerful emotions like, say, anger or attachment or desire, on the one hand, which give rise to powerful feelings, such as someone, because of some kind of strong hatred, may gain a sense of temporary satisfaction or sense of fulfillment, or maybe also kind of acute pain. And these, in the Buddhist language, we would say, in some sense, these are impulsive emotions. These are emotions which have their roots in propensities coming from past lives. That's how the Buddhists would explain it. In any case, these are sort of more impulsive emotional experiences. They may be powerful, so that's one category. But on the other hand, there is another level of experience which can take place at the level of thought and emotion, which are actually deliberately cultivated and have their grounding and reason and understanding. And initially they may be weak, but as you enhance them through constant familiarity, then these kind of experiences of happiness and sense of contentment, sense of inner contentment, derived from that kind of emotion and thought, can be more long-lasting and also can be more powerful. Just out of curiosity, among the members of the audience, how many are there who cannot follow the teachings in English but rather have to rely on Chinese translations? If you can raise your arms.
Okay. Then it is necessary. Translation. I thought almost none. In that case, the Chinese translator is extra burden. No need. So good, yes. Can you hear Chinese translation? Very good, very good. When I say in the Demin Nabozo in the Shaka, the Kasul Kangam Nyor, Parislavna, that Pearl and Nanchu Matakung, Janalia, to represent Shishi, to the Jata Shishi, Janal Nanchu, Nalta de Are. So for Nan and Napa Yimishim is done, that the Kasul Chulu Shandaji, Yimbachilla, Namba Sangaji, which carry Amara.
Actually, I feel hardly any reservations, actually lesser reservations when giving Buddhist lectures to the Chinese audience, because Buddhism has actually flourished in China, in fact 4 centuries earlier than Tibet. So when speaking to a Chinese Buddhist audience, in a way I'm explaining something which is already a part of their own traditional religious faith. And also there's already an established standardized vocabulary in Chinese for the Buddhist terms.
The Western language knowledge and the French, German, English, and the better terminology and the cabaret,
the problem of explaining Buddhist ideas and thoughts in modern European languages such as French, German, and English is that
Italian.
And Italian is that there is no standardized vocabulary, and so many scholars each has their own preferences and choices.
Yeah. Ta ada yilu tengne ka diru so yong de ya ta rikchi di gyumjen li ya gyumjen de ka ba che phu da da tin de thone sam ta ne ta tut de ya gi ka shur bi tut de ya gi ta ji tungye se ya da de wa tu ya gi tablam thela any Loti, that passes some of where catch up Cherry. Loti is the shower and she turned netting and she. The Kareslovna, Taco, Jumzen of Cavalia, Javachen, Samtani, any panda you mean something you in this and she's a she, then the man, Namdo Chigo, you am do. 남도 지고디 차단걸로디 허허 끼는잖아요. 그러면 이동 넘버도 줬다니 이동 시부시 넘버도 줬다 이거야. 미두버디에 시단계 있잖아요. 그 지금 미두베 차 취미 지금 남도 줬다니 용되게 딱고 아니 그 남도 줬다니 세베 있잖아요. 뭐이는 수가 또 있잖아요. 그 심이 차로야. 다 수저데 균제 잡아 제니 야도 그게 가서래 최부 그거 좀 상담하는데 내가 더 assembly 야지 주주도야 assembly 디기 주야서는 디 뭐에 내주 가리임버디 셰베체니 뭐에 내주 대다 템버치 타네 로가 저기가 인들 다로 참아이 민사디기 내가 지금 리기서를 선택이.
So we spoke about 3 categories of experiences grounded in thought and emotion. On the one hand, there are those experiences grounded or derived from impulsive thoughts and emotions. And then on the other are those that are grounded in more reasoned or rationally thought processes. So if we compare the two further, we will see that the experiences that are grounded in more impulsive forms of emotions and thoughts, to a large extent, involve a lot of projections from our mind. For example, our attractions toward some desirable object. It's not just that there is a recognition of something desirable about the object, but rather we tend to exaggerate that quality and then almost see the object as 100% positive or 100% desirable. And it is that kind of projection that leads to more sort of powerful or strong emotional interactions with the object. Similarly, if the object is undesirable, we tend to exaggerate that quality of undesirableness, be it ugliness or be it whatever, and then we tend to sort of inflate it, and then through this way interact with the object in a very inflated manner. Whereas the more reasoned kind of emotion and thoughts have grounding in reality, it also involves much more rational thought processes, less influence of pure speculations and projections, and because of this, there is a much greater correspondence to the way things really are, the reality of the situation. So because of this, it raises the question of the importance of cultivating kind of right understanding.
Today in this any 참에 슝크돌이야 타냐 자다르들라 참하던 제부 사지 다 참하던 제부 사지 샤유르자네 아니 제부달라 다 파도 최베 제부다 파도 마최베 제부 사지 어다 파도 마최베 제부를 땅 안한 좀 되제 땐도 대외 아니 터도 내리 다가는 신기니 내고기니 가서 그게 되자 뭔도 제가 뭔도 일이 참을로 아니 세면 제부리스 봐 간다 배는 미기 주봉 수준다고 배는 뭔도 주지 미기 주봉 수준다고 거르다 참아 이미 가신데 간다 미기 주봉 수준도 영알라 로 맞추어지 밀루에 로치기 시저체니 아니 네번이 근데 그 통에 아니 가서 미기와 양답을 돈된 두지 용과에 쳐요 그래서 드림이 있는데 간다 그게 이체베 아니 그게 가서 우리가 유기내수 지른내받는 신 가서 그게 로트기 된 진단데 밀로 임바 다 가다 진단 요리 밀로 임바지기 로찌기 시즈체 로찌기를 땜배 타네 배는 미기 좀 쓰는다고 동서 용과에 쳐도 와 그래서 드림이 있는데 아니 탐제 내릴 차샤는 대회잖아요 아니 가다 담에도 싫었으면 그 참아 싶으시는 거야. 그래서 무슨 믿지 않네. 다 간다. 당연히 전주생 샤베 있나야. 다 두번인된 로스 러브윤도 야 가다 전주 되니까 안되네. 가다 싫어고 좋아다 잡다. 싫어고 좋아다 잡다네. 민주인이 싫어고 좋아다 잡다는 연구도 이게 가서 주고 전주생이네 싫어고 좋아다 잡다는 연구도 이게 탐에 짬도를 차시하네. 싫어고 좋아다 잡는 연구도 싫어서는 해지 참여하는 거 되게 하래. 자, 이제 뭐 인도 디디 파도 최근 적었어. 대 영화래야 파도 맞춰배다. 제부디 연구하러 간다. 유지 싹도 땅에. 그다. 유지 싹도 땅에 유텔라다. 밀로에 지들 샤워는 저 되는 내내 밀로에다 로참아지기 아니 고작 참아지 고기가 있는데 다 바로 맞추면 샤샤 떡봐요. 그래서 샤샤 떡배 때는 연구가 있는데 다 가서 바로 맞추면 되고 참면 되고 시행도 와.
So we realize that cultivating the right understanding or knowledge is critical for our quest to attain happiness that we all naturally aspire to anyway. Because of this correlation between cultivation of right understanding and knowledge on the one hand and the fulfillment of our basic aspiration to be happy on the other, we see in the Buddhist philosophical literature references to certain spiritual levels of realization as fruits of knowledge, fruits of understanding. And the texts speak about immediate fruits, or the short-term fruits, and long-term fruits. For example, like even the attainment of the highest enlightenment and spiritual liberation are said to be fruits of knowledge and fruits of understanding. Now, reason for that is, for example, even a sort of a basic spiritual practice, say like leading an ethically disciplined way of life, which from the Buddhist point of view is leading a life that restrains from the 10 non-virtuous actions of body, speech and mind. Even that kind of basic ethical discipline requires some kind of grounding in the understanding of the rightness and appropriateness of the moral conduct and their consequences. So from the understanding of the consequences of negative actions, one restrains and one cultivates the ethical discipline. So that as a result of this, you attain certain spiritual achievements. And so you can see that there is a correlation between knowledge and understanding on the one hand and the spiritual realization on the other. So especially in the Buddhist explanation, for example, like the experiences such as true renunciation and also Bodhicitta, the altruistic intention to attain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings, and even the basic practice of taking refuge in the Buddha, Dharma and Sangha, all of these practices cannot be completed without the complementary factor of wisdom or insight. And when we talk about the need and critical importance for the need for wisdom and insight as a complementary factor, we are talking about knowledge, we are talking about understanding. So in the Buddhist part, there is a tremendous emphasis placed on cultivating the right understanding or knowledge.
Today in the Tao, Jitanda, Kasurma, Shi Namsha Dala Pavia, Sangandiko, Kachibutsuka, Dirisha.
Because of this, we find great emphasis placed in the Buddhist text on developing the right understanding of the nature of reality.
That Jungutane, so you do that, so Pachi, Jundo Komare, and Dinana Umabe Junda. Tane, Jitan Chagar, Telia, Shitambani, Lam Tapshini, Jebukuni, Senduxion.
So we find, if you look at the Buddhist teachings in general, and particularly the teachings of the Mahayana schools, we find such, particularly the middle way school, we find such a terminology as the need for cultivating the understanding of two truths, which constitutes the basic nature of reality, the need for cultivating the two aspects of the path, wisdom and method, and the need for attainment of the two dimensions of the resultant Buddhahood, the Dharmakaya and Rupakaya, the form body, and the truth body.
Dagana Jingibana Nga Shung, Sung Yuzane, and the Jerbuchigi, and Tanya Jarnandam Shilia, Shingmabu Netu, Lam Drebe Jimba, Jebumon to Chisu Saja Tanya Jandu.
Similarly, we find, if you look at the Vajrayana teachings, particularly the terminology that has been introduced by and developed by Tsongkhapa, Lama Tsongkhapa, we find that there is a discussion about first cultivating the right understanding of the nature of reality, which includes the nature of one's body as well, and then the second, the need for understanding the actual stages of the path in one's spiritual evolution, and then the process by which one attains the various levels of realization.
Chasanga and Mondo Jengi, Tama Sung to Semji, Tama Sung to Zane, Kurimdi, Juta, Tampam, and the Sajalas of Kunjusum, soon they are Kurimdigi, Savashare. She Tampani, Namshatone, Tambashi Saju Guare, Tambashilitene, any Jambu Languare, Gipsum Sag Namshati Languare.
So when we think along these lines, then we really appreciate the tremendous wisdom in the sequence of the path, the teachings that we find in Maitreya's clear ornament of realizations, where he states that one must first cultivate the understanding of the basic teachings of the Four Noble Truths, and the understanding of Four Noble Truths will then provide the practitioner with a sound basis to seek refuge in the three jewels, the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, and that is the right way of going about it.
Tadi kaso shize na ngotu rum shize. So dine ima idu zane da nang chu shung na lo le ani jaba cha shu le kwa otu de sha. Jaba cha.
So this is sort of a basic introductory background to the lectures. So the main point is that in all of these teachings we find emphasis placed on understanding and using one's critical faculty.
So today me do sane jomden degi any sungli ya gwa wang sung sha ba de ye ba do sane any tebo chimbu any luji ya sungli ya da chi shi ba yimi ni she.
Because of this importance of applying one's own critical faculty, the Mahayana Buddhism's approach to the scriptures of the Buddha is to accept one category of scriptures which are definitive and others that may require further interpretation, so not to accept on their face value.
So today in the Sanada, Gelodang Kanam Gisagi, Susjavati Sunyadi to Simulari.
And it is for this kind of reasons we find in the sutra that the Buddha himself has said that, O bhikshus and the wise people, do not accept my words simply out of reverence to me, but rather you should subject them to critical analysis and then accept on the basis of your own understanding. Because of these, we also find emphasis placed on certain hermeneutic approaches to the scriptures, where it is stated that when reading a text, when reading a scripture, one should not rely on the fame of the person who has spoken it, rather on the content of what the person is saying. And when relating to the content, when relating to the text of the person that has been spoken by the person, one should rely more on the subject matter and the meaning rather than the kind of literary composition. And when sort of relating to the subject matter of the text, one should rely more on the sort of experiential understanding rather than intellectual understanding. So we will read from the first text, that is the middle end stages of meditation. I think all of you have been given a copy of the translations. It's on page 6.
Loving Kamalashila, any Kenji Shiwatsu Gidu. That's all you're charging, buddy.
The author of this text, Bhavanagrama, the stages of the meditation, was Kamalashila, who was one of the principal students of the famous Indian master Shantarakshita.
Kenji Shiwatsu, Chijet Chison Design Kavlia, and a pearl Dinshunanche. Jenny. Any loving share, any kind of church in the Pearlia, good in Shin Charge to say. Then any Chisu in the Congo Loma Kamalashile, the Pearlia picture, other than that, Yaseniga Pearlia, the picture.
The Indian master Shantarakshita was invited to Tibet at the time of the monarch Tizong Desen's reign, and together with the monarch Tizong Desen and Shantarakshita, and also Guru Padmasambhava, these three personalities have played a critical role in the establishment of Buddha Dharma in Tibet. And also later, Kamalashila, Shantarakshita's student, was invited to Tibet as well, and he also played an important role in the establishment of Buddha Dharma in Tibet.
Any Kenji Shiwatsu Pearlia, Kenji Shiwatsu Pearlia Pevni, any Gombo Zoya Pearl Zawing. No love Kamalashila, the Pearlia, and Gombo Zawari, Gombo Zadan, the Page Paper, Jongo Sidua. Golon, Chow, to the Lamdan, to the Lamdan.
Both the masters, Shantarakshita and Kamalashila, both of them passed away in Tibet. Shantarakshita passed away, but Kamalashila's circumstances of his passing away has been rather a tragic one. It is generally believed that he was actually murdered. It shows how rough, the crude the Tibetan character was.
So
whenever I think about this historical fact of Kamalashila's tragic death, I feel slightly embarrassed and also frightened of the sort of the extent to which Tibetan character can become violent. Of the two most important works composed by this Indian master Kamalashila, one is known as the Madhyamaka Alamkara, the light of the middle way. Light of the middle way was composed in India, but this text, Stages of the Meditation, was composed in Tibet. Sorry, I should have said Madhyamaka Aloka. Madhyamaka Aloka, the light of the middle way.
That kenji gigan the kenji shiwotsu ji caijin de and uma jian da uma de da usegi shungbe ke chibushi zhe zabi.
Kamalashila's teacher Shantarakshita composed many important Buddhist philosophical texts, including Madhyamaka Alamkara, the ornament of the middle way, and also Tattva Samgraha, which was an encyclopedic presentation of the Buddhist philosophical system.
Uma gengi shelu yare, and the uma naman shelu the middle data, uma and the kasa, gumring with the shelu, that shuyabati, that loventini, that gurdin just tempetane, and the shadow in Sampetane shelu, that shuyu.
So the oral transmissions for the teachings of Shantarakshita's Madhyamaka Alamkara, ornament of the middle way, and also Kamalashila's Bhavanakrama, the stages of the meditation, still survives to this day. So whenever I have the opportunity to give some explanation of Kamalashila's text, these stages of the meditation, I feel as if I am repaying some of his kindness. I myself received the oral transmission of this particular text, Stages of Meditation, from the late Sakya scholar and master, Sangye Tenzin.
Kong sense the Mr. Lama Chan Disseni, Kasurbi Koyonjaro Chen Chaji, Remindu, Kong in Samialia, the Nagol Pepe Kudude, and Samialia, Kenjin Shiwasu, Shukti Yosari. Kenjin Shiwasu, Shukti Dene, Kamne Pepe, Zoching Lama, Nagol Peshumichi, and Korang Lama Chenema, Sunju, Gurim Sunju, Nagudus only. And Didus Cambridge Sanjay Nagol Pevata, and Tizuka, the Gudu Indu, and Gumrimdi, the same. That the Lame Lugukadi Mistine to Zajna Kemajulaine, Kada Abjol Nagorish, Kanepeshumichi.
The late Sangye Tenzin, the Sakya master Sangye Tenzin himself received the transmission accidentally from a Dzogchen master Dzogchen teacher who was not particularly well known, but the Dzogchen master was giving this teaching at Samye, the monastery that was established by Shantarakshita, and in fact from the very throne which was said to have belonged to Shantarakshita. So Sangye Tenzin, while he was on a pilgrimage to Samye monastery, happened to coincide with the teachings on this text being given by the Dzogchen master, so he received the teachings there. But as to who that person was, this Dzogchen master, I haven't been able to find any information.
Yeah. And then gumrim 통다 파수 예배난게 gumrim 발바디 뉴침부스도 저 있는 유다디마 조셰디.
The text itself, the stages of meditation or bhavanakrama, is composed of 3 chapters, and often I mainly concentrate on the 2nd chapter because I see this as a very comprehensive chapter. So I take the opportunity to ground my explanations primarily on the 2nd chapter.
시다 혈을 주마이나 아니 야 gumrim 당고다 gumrim sunbe nalo gumrim tame nalo ya gumrim 발배 nalo 마스를 되게 야 세셔들이 용되기도 저나고 또 스타트는 야고요.
Of course, if we have more time, then it would be very appropriate and useful to refer also to the 1st chapter and the 3rd chapter, especially on points which are not very clear or not thoroughly explained in the 2nd chapter.
then lalin sodubdi 벽이 다 용자게 다 정주 선발 천대는 지대야지기다. 그냥 천례 계세 도미 신다 계세 신 천토되지. 그냥 가서 그냥 국이랑 그 천대 천신바디니 도미 상세인다. 아니 사제 일단 티베 해봐도 전이 계세 도미 상보 공기다 그냥 공 개바 전부래. 공기 낸자르디 유라면 잡아지 자송 너디쟁 잡아지 자송 개배 공부를 해. 지금 다 공기 저주섬기 냠는 거 좀 봐. 너를 뒤에 댄셔버지 라는 소리만. 어다 딘자니 다들 시롱 뒤에 되버지 당에 디마도 토비야 말해. 라는 소리만 토비야 말다. 전이 딩에 수서디 네 준수 수서 아니 쿨라वर में 땡지 견제 군이 시위. 쿨라वर में 땡지 견제 그런 자의 배지 충유기 다지 충유 그런 거다 건배 콩으로 잡아 있는 그 규리. 그런 안에 출루림이 나네 지리샤. 진짜 콩기자네 내 라는 수도 쉬운. 콩기 센서디 감 적진 캠부스 산샤.
The 2nd text which we are going to use in this series of teachings is the 37 Practices of Bodhisattva, the translation of which is on page 32. This was a very important text composed by a very well-known and highly respected Tibetan master known as Togme Sangpo, who was universally accepted in Tibet as a great bodhisattva. And in fact, he then later became known as the Bodhisattva Togme Sangpo. And in these 37 practices, he encapsulates the entire essence of the practice of the Bodhisattva. In fact, later I had the opportunity to read some of his other more scholarly works, and it seems he was a great scholar as well, a very learned master, because I read an important commentary that he has written on an Indian classical text, Sublime Continuum Uttara Tantra, and also another text called Ornament of the Mahayana Path, Mahayana Sutra Alamkara. I myself received the oral transmissions of this particular teaching from the late Kuno Lama Rinpoche, Tenzin Gyatso, from whom I also Tenzin Gyatsen, from whom I have also received the teachings on Shantideva's Guide to the Bodhisattva's Way of Life. And Kuno Lama Rinpoche in turn received the teachings from a Dzogchen master from the eastern part of Tibet.
That dini ma nimdo da dani shuna sam chanjung di gumrim digi gyabding deshe da lale sodumadi da digi ladu linzu ma da nyamling riberting ladu linzu di ini lale sodumadi dichi ora 참 지들 외버질래 외버 그들에 마도 스테이지 쉬고 삼 찬수.
So I felt that a combined explanation of these 2 texts would be very appropriate, and so we will use Kamala Shila's text, The Stages of Meditation, 2nd chapter, as a kind of the basic framework, and also which provides a lot of the background information and explanations. And I will use Togme Sangpo's text, the 37 practices, is a kind of a distilled essence of these presentations so that they are made applicable to one's actual day-to-day practice. So in this way, what I will do is I will intersperse my commentary on both these two texts as I go along, and wherever the appropriate sections we find, I will bring in the explanations of Togme Sangpo's text. So that would be the format of the lectures.
当然，我的地区呢，我们的生活，看见小说也是，你当然拍些地面，商业一些，前年我的，嘛呗，一些人不钱，我的送不得了呀，呀的他年都让人写给你，那我们差的要嘞。前年那让人拿我了对的，没留意，他们写差的要嘞，是吧？让人拿我对的没出啊，让人拿我对的没出写吧，他们写要嘞。那其实呢，那第送不得了呀，那么就的商业讲的，大厂别的兄弟那嘛都西北呢，样的路住的，路嘛，确实是，那边大把么这个送的被顶住岗位，到我们嘛送用的，确他们这个东西顶住岗的，的那个的当那当的顶住送住的送个也是嘞，当的顶住送住给大家的我们到啊。送那个拿了，拿谁14个他们这边呢？他也都让人呀，写没写你的，看到让人拿了对的，参嘛了的让人拿的出一些吧的，没出一些吧，就是没得你以为钱呢？那样拿谁你送多啊？这第送没拿了俩的，我们吧第送不得了呀，人就学送看不是这个，他也都是这样的。所以但第送个呢，我们。告诉的，俺的下个，我的他年都让在民国过了，确他们些，电竞这边就用吧，电竞用吧他，电竞搞呗，我的那个他我们南西送那个，大家都我们不吃不吃的。
I just wanted to make one more point before we enter into the actual explanation of the text. The author of this text, Kamalashila, and his master. Shantarakshita, and together with another master, Indian master known as Jnanagarba. These three belong to a particular group which represents a reading of interpretation of Nagarjuna's philosophy that is slightly divergent, different from those followed by Chantakirti and Buddhapalita. And the principal difference between these two camps is that although they are both sort of equal in reading Nagarjuna's philosophy of emptiness, by means of understanding the equality between dependent origination and emptiness, seeing the union of dependent origination and emptiness, there is a difference between these two approaches because Chantakirti and Buddhapalita rejects any notion of intrinsicness, any notion of intrinsic reality or intrinsic identity, whereas Kamalashila and Shantarakshita and Jnanagarba, they represent a school of interpreting Nagarjuna, whereby they do accept a degree of intrinsicness, degree of inherentness to the identity and existence of things. That's a kind of a philosophical divergence in the reading of Nagarjuna. That's a point I just wanted to make. And just as they accept a degree of objective inherentness to identity and existence, similarly they also accept that our cognition of things as possessing some kind of intrinsic nature is not false, is valid.